The Formula One race in Qatar ended in greater fashion last weekend, handing over one more victory to Max Verstappen. Theoretically, Perez had the chance to challenge his teammate for the 2023 driver's title until the race in Qatar, but practically, Verstappen was easily on his way to win his third world championship. Anyhow, the weekend ended officially crowning Verstappen as the newest Formula One champion. Other than this, the whole race weekend in Qatar took a dramatic nature with on-track incidents, and we're going to tell you how things unfolded at Losail Circuit. But before we proceed, hit the subscribe button and smash the bell icon for more exciting updates. The sole practice session of the race weekend was the last opportunity for each driver to adapt for the low grip conditions on the circuit due to thin sandy residue dispersed all over the circuit by high-speed winds from the nearby desert. Verstappen was able to beat Fernando Alonso, who appeared as the session leader for a long time in the latter part of the session. The Ferrari duo Sainz and Leclerc were able to beat him with some fast laps at the closing stages. Then, drivers directly headed to the qualifying in the evening. The championship leader Verstappen was the first to top the timesheets in Q1 of the qualifying by setting a lap time of 1 minute and 26.884 seconds. But he was beaten by Alonso, Leclerc and Norris within a brief time interval. However, the McLaren driver was disqualified thereafter due to exceeding track limits. All the drivers appeared to be improving their final attempts, but Verstappen topped the timesheets again at the end of the session. Williams rookie Sargent was knocked out at the end of Q1 by his teammate Alexander Albon on his last lap by a slim margin of 0.092 seconds. Other drivers who failed to cross the first hurdle were Stroll, Lawson, Magnussen and Guan Yu. The championship leader set the pace again in Q2 on used rubber, but the McLaren duo passed him with their fresh set of tyres. But he completed a very fast lap by improving his lap time to 1 minute and 24.483 seconds to retake P1. However, he was beaten again by Hamilton in the closing stages of the session by grabbing P1 by a tenth. Sainz and Perez, who finished the session as P12 and P13, were the most notable omissions from Q3, as both regularly appear in Q3. Perez's lap time was deleted due to exceeding track limits. That's why he missed the opportunity to cross the hurdle. Tsunoda, Albon and Hülkenberg are the other three drivers who were unable to select into Q3. Verstappen easily topped the timesheets at the beginning of Q3, as Hamilton and Norris lost their first flying laps due to exceeding track limits. In his final attempts, the Dutchman bailed out into the pits after running wide. Norris improved his lap time and it was sufficient enough to clinch P2, but his lap time was deleted after running wide at turn 10. Then Russell and Piastri sealed their positions behind Verstappen as P2 and P3, but the McLaren man lost that opportunity as he followed a wider route as same as his teammate. So Verstappen, Russell, Hamilton, Alonso and Leclerc booked the top 5 positions of the starting grid of the main race on Sunday, after handing over the penalties to the drivers who exceeded the track limits. So Piastri dropped down to P6 and Norris to P10. Sandwiched in between the McLaren duo, Gasly, Ocon and Bottas reserved the slots from P7 to P9 in the starting grid. Ahead of the sprint shootout, track limits at turn 12 and 13 were revised by the FIA based on the issues raised by Pirelli about sidewall separation. An extra 10 minutes was given to all the drivers as a practice familiarization session to understand the changes to the general track conditions. Verstappen was able to top the timesheets by setting the early pace with a 1 minute 25.510 seconds on the medium compound tyres. Then Russell, Piastri and Alonso set some competitive laps, but all were behind the Dutchman. A bunch of drivers were observed to be the victims of the punishments for exceeding track limits, even though they set some fast laps. Verstappen and Norris were happy with the times they set in their initial attempts and decided to watch the rest of SQ1 from the pits. Stroll, Albon, Tsunoda, Magnussen and Sargent were knocked out at the end of SQ1. SQ2 started with the investigations on Russell, Hamilton, Gasly, Lawson, Sargent, Tsunoda, Stroll and Albon for allegedly failing to follow the race director's instructions regarding maximum delta time. Norris clinched P1 by setting the pace at 1 minute 24.947 seconds, and he was closely followed by Verstappen and Piastri. Lap times of Leclerc, Hamilton, Zhou and Sainz were deleted due to exceeding track limits. Hamilton experienced a shock SQ2 as his flying lap time was deleted due to running outside of the permitted track area. He was knocked out at the end of the second shootout session alongside with Gasly, Bottas, Lawson and Zhou. All the drivers came out of their pits with fresher sets of soft rubber to set their times in SQ3. Verstappen's lap was deleted for exceeding the track limits, paving the way for Norris and Piastri to move into the top 2 positions. Then it turned into a tense qualifying battle between the McLaren duo and recovering Verstappen for the pole position of the sprint race in the evening. Piastri was able to beat his teammate in the final attempt, and Norris had to settle for P2 as he ran wide in the final corner of the final attempt. The championship leader had to be satisfied with P3, behind the drivers of the Woking base team. In the absence of Hamilton in SQ3, Russell's maximum effort was strong enough only to put his Mercedes in 4th behind Verstappen. Behind him, Sainz, Leclerc, Hülkenberg, Perez, Alonso and Ocon sealed their positions in the starting grid of the sprint race. The 19 laps long sprint event featured 3 safety car periods, which resulted to eliminate Perez, sealing the 3rd consecutive driver's title for Verstappen. Most of the drivers in front of the starting grid decided to go with soft tyres to gain an advantage at the start, except the pole sitter Piastri and Verstappen. Piastri was able to hold his lead against the soft runners at the start, and with time, he started to develop a considerable gap with the drivers behind him. However, Verstappen experienced a big loss at the start as he was passed by Russell, Sainz and Leclerc, who started the race on softs. Very close battles were observed all over the pack, but all of them were neutralised when the safety car was introduced as a response to Lawson's spin in the gravel after losing his rear. The race was resumed on lap 3 and drivers started to run on their full throttle, but the race leader Piastri lost the lead that he maintained at the start and Russell started an attack on him. So the Mercedes driver took the inside path at turn 6 to pass the McLaren rookie driver. However, the momentum of the race changed again when Logan Sargent spun off the track by himself, running through turn 9. Then the race restarted again at the start of lap 7 after a brief time interval under the safety car. After restarting the race, a clear decline in the performance of the soft compounds appeared everywhere in the pack, so it was the dawn of the era of more durable compounds, and drivers running on medium compounds started to hunt the drivers running on softs, one by one. However, Russell was able to hold Piastri at bay without allowing him to take the DRS advantage even after the race restart. Meanwhile, Verstappen was able to climb up the ladder with the assistance of DRS in consecutive laps by passing the Ferrari duo. On lap 11, Piastri was able to reduce the gap with Russell up to the DRS range, so he was able to take back the race lead when they reached the first corner. However, another disturbance for the race happened when the safety car was introduced for the 3rd time. That was due to the collision that happened at the end of the way battle between Ocon, Hülkenberg and Perez. All 3 cars crashed into the gravel trap at turn 2. All the cars aligned behind the safety car until the circuit was ready for racing. The race was restarted on lap 15. Russell requested for a tyre change during the safety car, as he felt that his tyres were already gone, but his suggestion was directly rejected by his race engineer. Meanwhile, Piastri was building up a good lead of 2.6 seconds with the driver behind him, despite Verstappen chasing him with a good pace. The Dutchman set 2 fastest laps out of the remaining 3, but the Australian rookie was easily on his way to a maiden Formula 1 victory. Norris demonstrated a great recovery drive at the latter part of the race. At the end of the 3rd safety car session, he passed 2 Ferraris within the next 2 laps and also hunted down Russell on the final tour around the circuit. So George Russell completed the race as 4th ahead of his teammate, even after leading the race at one moment. Hamilton got a large improvement up to P5 from P12, largely thanks to the triple car collision that happened involving Ocon, Hülkenberg and Perez. The Ferrari duo finished the race as 6th and 7th after losing considerable track positions at the latter part of the race. Albon, Alonso and Gasly were able to seal the final 3 positions inside the top 10. Based on the result of the qualifying session on Friday evening, drivers parked their cars to start the race. This time, all the teams had to change all of their strategies, as the FIA mandated a maximum of 18 lap stints for each set of tyres due to the safety concerns raised by the tyre supplier Pirelli. So all the teams had to go for a 3-stop strategy to align with the new regulations introduced for Qatar. It took only a few seconds from the start of the race to record the first collision. Both the Mercedes drivers attempted to take the race lead by passing Verstappen when they reached the first corner. However, it ended in a collision between two Mercedes challengers, paving the way for Verstappen to take a clear lead in the race. Hamilton's race came to an end early as he lost his right rear wheel after the collision, but Russell was lucky to rejoin the race after taking a new nose. Piastri was able to promote himself to the second position thanks to the series of events that happened after this collision. The race went green again on lap 5, allowing all the drivers to run with their full throttle. Immediately, race leader Verstappen improved his lap time to 1 second over Piastri, who was running behind. Meanwhile, Perez, who started the race from the pit lane, was able to gain a significant improvement up to P13, thanks to the clash of 4 cars pitting ahead of him. Ocon was the first driver of the front pack who decided to take a fresher set of rubber on lap 11, and he was followed by Alonso, Piastri and Leclerc within the next few laps. However, Verstappen decided to remain on the old rubber until lap 17, and after the pit stop, he was able to improve his gap with Piastri up to 8 seconds. Meanwhile, Norris was able to pass Leclerc for the 4th position. Most of the drivers were uncomfortable with the extreme temperature at Qatar, and it was a tougher assignment for the drivers. Before coming to the pit stop, Alonso asked his crew to throw some water into the cockpit to cool the burning seat. Meanwhile, Williams rookie driver Sargent was not comfortable with the hot climate conditions at Losail and retired after completing 40 laps without any major issues in his Challenger. Most of the drivers appeared to be under warning from race control over breaching track limits. Perez was also awarded a 5-second time penalty for exceeding those limits. Both the McLaren drivers decided to take their final round of pit stops a little bit early. Piastri switched to hard rubber on lap 44, and Norris followed a similar strategy 1 lap later. But Verstappen was confident about his tyres and decided to delay his final pit stop until lap 52. His choice for the final few laps was medium compounds. Verstappen crossed the line 5 seconds clear of Piastri, recording the 49th victory in his F1 career. Then Piastri and Norris crossed the line, delivering successive double podium finishes for the Woking-based team. Russell, who decided to complete the final stint on softs, was able to defend his 4th position against Leclerc after a close battle at the later stage of the race. Alonso, Ocon, Bottas, Zhou and Perez were able to reserve the final point-offering spots of the race. Meanwhile, Perez experienced a 5-second time penalty for exceeding the track limits, even after the checkered flag. Stroll, Gasly and Albon experienced multiple penalties for breaching the track limits, but were able to save the slots from P11 to P13 in the final standings. The bottom positions of the standings were occupied by Haas and AlphaTauri drivers, as Magnussen, Tsunoda, Hülkenberg and Lawson were unable to deliver any eye-catching performance at Qatar. Most people wondered about the absence of Sainz for the main race, after demonstrating some strong performances over the first 2 days of the weekend. He didn't take part in the race due to the fuel system issue on his Ferrari. So that is how the race weekend in Qatar ended, handing over the 3rd consecutive driver's title to Max Verstappen. Now, F1 is heading towards the American continent for 4 interesting races there. The United States Grand Prix is scheduled to be held on the 23rd of October at the Circuit of the Americas. Now the champions of the 2023 season have already been decided, and the remaining 5 rounds will be testing and practicing sessions for all the teams in the grid. How do you rate the race in Qatar? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel to get more exciting Formula 1 news. See you in the next video, guys. Goodbye.